What's up, guys? Creek Runner here. Out here tackling some more trash on Tate's Creek. This is actually footage from a few months back, and I've got literally hundreds of hours of footage of trash picking. So I'm trying to play catch up and get some videos online so that you guys can, sort of see what my trash picking routine is. And this area in particular here, um, it's kind of a part of it's sort of a party spot for teenagers, hangout spot. There's actually a swimming hole down here where people go to, and what I'm walking down now is kind of the trail, the pathway to get down to that area. Um, and basically, there's a bridge also nearby, and there's a lot of trash that's thrown either over that bridge or on the side of the bridge. You can kind of see it in the background over there. And but I'm going to the left today. Actually, I think there's going to be footage on both sides of the bridge, but down here is sort of the party area that I'm getting into. This is my gloves that I wear, which I highly recommend. These gloves are puncture resistant. They are cut and puncture resistant. They also, I believe, deter gas and chemicals, things like that. They're very very expensive but very high quality gloves, and I've literally that pair lasted me almost, I think, 9 months. So one pair of gloves for 9 months is pretty good before it actually got a rip in it. Most pairs of gloves that I've gone through in the past, they hardly last any time at all. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks tops. So here's a nasty, nasty giant piece of carpet that is looks like it's kind of wet. And sometimes what I'll do is if the carpet is big enough, or what I mean is if the carpet is too big, then I'll actually take and cut it up. Which I think this piece right here might have actually been a piece that I laid out to dry. And I know it looks a little wet still, but I laid it out to dry for a couple of days just so I could pack it easier. And that it's kind of weird because I almost remember, even though it's been a few months, I almost remember carrying this particular piece. It weighed about 50 pounds, I believe, which is about the max for that particular bag that I've got. Um, I started doing this with regular trash bags, the hefty bags, and they did not do it with creek trash. They're great for, if you're wanting to do roadside cleanup and it's predominantly bottles, plastic bottles and cans. But I recycle all the cans and the bottles that are in decent condition. So I prefer to use the green bags for that even. That way I can, sort through and separate that stuff out of the green bags. Also, when you're looking at scrap metal and heavy things like carpet, you need a heavy duty bag. And these tarp bags that I use are pretty incredible for that. Like I said, maximum that I would put in them was about 40 or 50 pounds. 50 pounds is actually still is kind of stretching it. One time I tried to put something in a bag, I think it weighed about 70 pounds, and it broke the bottom out of the bag. So, it's a tarp bag. It's very high quality, but, everything has its limits. Um, right here, I'm pulling out a pretty old box spring. All the fabric has been eaten off of it or eroded or whatever. However it happened, it's just down to the metal. If I had to guess, something like this could have been in the creek for 20, 30 years plus. That same exact area where I pulled that box spring out, I also had to pull out a mattress that still had all of the fabrics and everything on it. But I do this on a different separate video. And we're getting into some beer cans here, which is, pretty common for a party spot where, the teenagers like to come out, hang out. They just kind of throw all their cans. It'd be nice if they realized that they could take all those cans, take them home, crush them up, keep them for a while, and, within about a month or so, they might actually have beer money. Not that I'm promoting teenage drinking or anything, but if they're going to do it, um, instead of throwing it on the ground, might as well at least take the cans or bottles home with you. And then I get into a lot of broken glass here. There's, I think I don't actually show all the footage for this, but a lot of this job is just picking up little pieces of glass. Sometimes it's impossible to get it all, especially with the microplastics, where they're shredded up. But if it's glass, I try to get everything I can, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just take my hand and I'll scrape and get, even the dirt and everything, just to try and make sure, because obviously you don't want a human or a small animal getting this glass stuck in their foot. That would suck, especially for, like, say, a little rabbit hopping around to get a piece of glass stuck in their foot, because there's nobody that's going to be able to pull that out. Here's somebody who's drinking pretty heavy, this big liquor bottle there. And then, like, here's, I always find tons of scrap metal, just countless pieces of scrap metal. I've taken in, couldn't tell you how many trailer loads. I would say about six or seven trailer loads of scrap metal in the last year. And I saved some of it to make art out of, which I'm definitely planning on in the next couple of months. I want to, as the temperatures are warming up, I definitely want to start making some more art with the metal that I've pulled out. Lately, though, through the winter months, I've been predominantly focused with the art on painting and painting bottles and things that I can do indoors, because I don't really have like a shop per se that I can make art in, and when it's cold in the winter, it's just kind of hard to get out there with tools and do stuff. But so I've just kind of been doing the canvas paintings and been painting on pieces of metal. And probably my favorite new thing to do is to take the glass bottles, and paint on those, which I have to use a multi-surface paint and actually bake that in the oven to keep the paint on there. Otherwise, the paint will just, it will wipe off of the bottle. So there's another piece of scrap metal I found. That's a big part of it is finding scrap metal pieces, and finding pieces of fabric and plastic that's sort of hung up in trees and debris. There's a lot of areas that I would kind of call, hot spot areas, where you have, like in this particular situation, a tree that's fallen over and there's a lot of limbs sticking out. So whenever the water levels rise, the trash will end up getting stuck as it floats down the water. And I try to get these items before the water levels get back up, because then those same pieces of trash may float down another mile or two, or eventually end up in the river, which this particular location that I'm cleaning right now is, it's about, I would say, about 2 miles from the river. So past the point where I'm at, the water level starts getting deeper, and I would need a kayak or a small boat to travel and pick trash. Which, interesting thing about this creek is I actually had it about 80% cleaned, if I had to guess. I was about 80% of the way up and down the entire stretch of creek, which is not too long of a creek. It's about 14 miles. And, I was feeling pretty confident that within the next month or two I would be able to completely have the creek cleaned. But unfortunately, about a month ago, a big flood came, and not only was a lot of the trash that was already in the creek scattered around, but a lot of the roadside trash, because the water levels had risen so much, ended up getting into the creek. So, and then too, there was some houses that were partially flooded. People's backyards were flooded. So there was a lot. And this what was crazy is this flood just kind of came out of nowhere. It just kind of happened towards the end of winter, and people were really not expecting this. Um, but literally, it scattered trash all up and down the creek, and it's pretty much like starting over again in Tate's Creek in this area, and pretty much any creek that I've cleaned. I've basically tried to clean Tate's Creek from front to back as thoroughly as possible to kind of make it, so like say this creek is clean, so it's time to move on to another creek. But at the same time, I've been doing some other cleanups on a couple of other creeks in the county as well, in hot spot, really bad sections of the creek. And I've gotten a few friends. We're kind of like a team, creek runners, and we will clean up different areas. A couple of weeks ago, I was out at a creek called Brushy Fort behind the local college, and it was hit really bad by the flooding, and it was insane how much trash was in a very small area, mainly because down from that stretch of creek there's a lot of houses, and that whole area, some of those houses were underwater, so there was a lot of trash from flooding that ended up in the creek. So a lot of times people are quick to say, "Hey, this is crazy that all this stuff people are throwing all this stuff in there." And yes, there are a lot of things that are thrown in the creek. Obviously, a lot of the bottles and cans that are thrown out on the side of the road end up in the creek. But I also try not to pass any sort of judgment with a lot of it, because I don't know where it came from. It could have been flooding. Somebody could have lost their house, and all of their possessions ended up, floating downstream. You don't know. And so I try to keep a positive attitude while I'm doing this, and not think about the fact that people are littering. All of this, because I would be upset all day. I would be I would probably hate my job if I focused on the negatives of this. So I prefer to, just look at it sort of, I don't know, sort of like a game. I think I'm indicating how many bags I've pulled out so far. I was doing this thing where I was kind of trying to keep count of how many bags. Um, but, I kind of try to look at it as sort of a game, and I like to be competitive with myself about it, see how many bags that, I can pull out in a set period of time, and I find that they're pretty fun. I wouldn't mind having like competition kind of things where, say, myself and another person did like a creek running competition and see who can pull out the most trash, and obviously all in good fun. But it gets more accomplished that way when you look at things competitively, without the stress of feeling like I have to win, or I have to this or that. But looking as friendly competition, I think can be really healthy. Um, what is this thing? Looks like a pole with some sort of long piece of fabric attached to it. It could have been could have been maybe like one of those umbrellas that, like an umbrella that you would put on your patio or something. Not completely sure. There's a lot of things that I pull out that I really have almost no idea what they are or what they were. Especially with scrap metal pieces, I'll find a piece of metal and it'll just look like a hunk of rusted metal, and it's hard to tell what it once was. Which just goes to show you how much trash that's in the creek that has been there for ages. You know, I'm pulling out not only the new trash, the trash that's been accumulating the last 15 years, but I'm also pulling out trash that's been in there for many decades. You know, antique trash, talking from the 1950s, the 1960s, when a lot of property owners didn't even have trash pickup, and they would go in their field behind their homes and burn trash or bury it, which during flooding situations, a lot of that trash would end up in the creek. And of course, back in that time period, a lot of people didn't really know, any kind of issues with doing it, and it wasn't something that was done by large populations of people. This town in particular, where I'm picking trash, the population was so much lower back then, and there wasn't a lot of stresses on environmental concerns back then. So this is sort of just compounded over the course of decades, and it's led to basically the creek systems being clogged, like clogged arteries is the way I look at it, because they've got so much junk in them. I mean, if you were to add up all of the that's the one reason why I take the weight, because in a creek you may look at the creek from a distance and say, oh, that creek looks pretty clean. It's not until you actually get in the creek and you start looking around. I've had multiple people that's helped me that said this exact thing. When you start looking around, a lot of this creek trash can be camouflaged. A plastic bottle, for example, if it's got a lot of mud on it, it's going to be brown, the same color as the rocks. And it's when you're actually out there picking the trash that you notice this, and you go, oh wow, there is actually a lot of trash here that we can't see from the road while we're driving, and so most people don't even see that there's a problem. It's not until you have these situations where you have like a dump site, or you have, like with the oceans lately, is all of this plastic washing up on the beaches. But what a lot of people don't take into consideration is this ocean beach trash could have very well came from many different creeks and rivers, because obviously the rivers empty out into the ocean, and we're talking, it's not just people throwing out bottles and cans while they're on their boats on the ocean or while they're on the beaches. This is basically a massive collective effort from everybody in the globe to trash up the entire ecosystem. And I think that people everywhere have to recognize that this is a huge problem. I mean, for many reasons, and the main thing is that I feel like people cannot really argue against or disagree with is the cleanliness of our water is the most important thing, as far as everybody needs water. Everybody has to have drinkable water to survive. And if all of our water is so polluted and full of chemicals and full of toxins, full of microplastics, full of that we don't even know what the long-term effects are yet, It's such a new thing. It's such a new concept. The whole idea of microplastics being everywhere that the studies haven't even come out yet. Because I've had people that say, "Well, what are the dangers of microplastics being in the water?" And I look it up, and the studies aren't there yet because it's such a relatively new concept. Grasping on to, well, what are the long-term effects of our drinking water having tons of millions of little tiny minuscule microscopic pieces per part. We don't know the long-term effects of that, and to be honest with you, I don't want to know what the long-term effects of that are. I think that we have got to start looking at solutions before the data comes in on this one, because it's obvious. It's obvious that we should not be doing this. It's something that I feel like cannot be debated. You cannot tell me that it's a good thing for this trash to be in our waters. Nobody can sit and say, well, I think that the trash is a good thing. I think that there should be trash on the ground. There should be trash in the creeks, in the rivers, the ocean. That's a great thing. Um, because you just can't make that argument. And not only that, but if you look at the wildlife affected, there is plenty of evidence showing um, turtles, birds. They've done autopsies on birds, cut them open, and showed like they were full of plastics and debris and stuff, and it was obvious that that's what killed them when their stomach's full of that. Um, Fish eating cigarette butts, and you open up the fish and you see like tons of cigarette butts inside of that fish. Um, it's just people not taking any consideration for their environment, for wildlife. It's pretty sad. With the cigarette butts, people are throwing them out. With the bottles and the cans, most likely they're throwing them out. Okay, so here I've kind of been getting off, not paying attention to what's going on in the video. We are at day 2 on this particular section of the creek. I actually shot them 2 days back to back, and I'm going to be cleaning around the bridge area. And this thing right here is, I believe it's a part of a sofa, the cushions of a sofa of some sort. And I'm having a little bit of trouble getting that out of the roots. I think I'm trying to put it in the bag, and it's just not going to go into the bag the way I want it. So I thought maybe I could put part of it in the bag and then cut the other part, and maybe that would work out. And then eventually I just said, forget it. And I just started dragging it, just started pulling it by hand. Because, I can't fit everything in these. They're great bags. They're 72 ounce or 72 gallon bags. But, I can't fit everything in them. Can't fit that. Can't fit a mattress in it. Some things I just have to drag and pull and tear. And that's the only way to get it done. This is the type of job that is not for everybody. I can't stress that enough. It's different to say, to go out and pick trash up in a park or an area where it's easy to get to, and you can use your picker, and you can make it, pretty easy day. Creek trash is what I refer to as extreme trash picking for a reason, because there's all these environmental factors. You have the water, which temperatures fluctuate. I get in there year round. I wear waterproof boots, and one great thing about that is, even if the water gets over the boots and into my boots, below freezing temperatures, my feet warm the water up, kind of like a wetsuit, and I'm okay. But a lot of people aren't going to want to be exposed to those elements. So you have the water temperature, and you have the water that you're dealing with. You're going to get dirty. You're going to get nasty. And then you have, uh, the rocks, and if it's really rocky, I've been known to wear a helmet a lot in rocky areas, especially if I know I'm going to need to run the bags in for a long distance. Then I'm going to wear a helmet, because once I actually did fall, I face planted and almost got hurt really bad. So I had my helmet on, and that kind of saved me. So yeah, there's the rocky elements. It's easy to trip and fall. You're pulling out trash that is going to be a lot nastier and a lot different from your average trash pulling. Um, if you are doing roadside cleanup, then large items can just be picked up by whatever vehicle, the truck or whatever. In this situation, large items, mattresses, carpet, things like this, you're talking about, it's a job, because you're going to be dragging or pulling that for a long distance. And that's one reason why I say anybody who cleans creeks regularly probably doesn't need a gym membership, because your gym membership is being out in the creek and pulling all of this trash and debris out. That's kind of like lifting weights, if you ask me. If not, even more hardcore. Just because of the endurance that it takes, the amount of space distance that you have to cover, the amount of factors as far as when you're carrying this stuff, not tripping and falling. So there's a lot of different elements of it. And anyways, so now I'm just kind of pulling out, what is that, sort of some fabrics and different things, trying to speed up, get things going here. And I've been experimenting with different angles. Like I've got the camera on my head for this particular video. I kind of started doing my next videos. You'll notice mounts here, shoulder mounts seem to be a better angle to kind of go with. But this is all sort of a learning process. I've yet to find the perfect way to film picking trash. I've actually considered having like a camera back here somewhere. I thought maybe that might be a good idea, but I'd have to have some sort of like a small crane extension or something to wear everywhere I went, which would probably look goofy. Which I'm already sure that people driving by are like, "What's this guy out there doing? He's picking trash with a GoPro on his head," But I get a lot of weird looks, anyways, from people. They just, it's not something you normally see somebody out, walking up and down the creeks picking trash. It's just, or at least where I live at, it's unheard of. As far as I know, I'm probably the only person really doing this, at least in the county that I'm at. And like I said, there's a lot of different reasons for that. It's just it's a very difficult job, but it's one that I enjoy, and it's one that I know other people who enjoy as well. And I'm hoping to have a good team, a solid team that we can actually pursue and do this multiple days a week. It's just a matter of getting there, getting funding. Here's another hazard coming up that you're about to see in just a second. Yeah, I know it was really quick, but there was a snake up there, and I always salute snakes, not worshiping or anything. I give them a salute, like, hey, acknowledging, we're two different beings, and I'm cool with you if you're cool with me, kind of thing. It works pretty well. I couldn't tell you how many snakes I've come into contact with, hundreds. I mean, there was a point when I was actually afraid of snakes, but one thing that happened was you know, when you face your fears on a regular basis, then that starts to change. So when I started getting in the creeks on a daily basis and seeing a lot of snakes, it got to one point in 2019. I was seeing probably 5 to 6 snakes a day. It was the particular season or something, I don't know, because it wasn't that way in 2020. But 2019, I mean, it's no joke, 5 to 6 snakes a day. I even started recognizing which snakes were which snakes, you know, in certain areas that I would travel down multiple times. And I got used to the snakes, and it seemed like the snakes actually kind of got used to me. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but um, I know that at times, like, snakes would run away as soon as they saw me, and now they just kind of like, hey, you know, hey snake, and they're like, hey, and there's sort of a, oh, I dropped the camera there. I think this is coming up on the end. Drop the camera, and I'm calling it a day, anyways. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, I don't try to mess with the snakes if at all possible, but I try not to, you know, I try not to just live in fear of them either. And I let them go their way, and I go my way, and uh, seems there hasn't been any problem. So, anyways, though, this ends this particular episode, and like I said, I'm going to be uploading more episodes soon. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate all your support. And check out the next episode that I'll be releasing soon. And y'all stay safe. Take it easy.